like John mentioned, fantasy. Now we're going to go to the waiver wire targets of week 15. For some people, you're just starting the playoffs this week, and for others, you're at the cusp of the playoffs. Nonetheless, like we've mentioned before, very important for you to be involved in the waiver wires, be involved in those, so that you can win, maybe get a key pickup. So, John, take it away.
All right. So the waiver wire pickups of the week, like you just talked about, it's the playoffs. You don't want to ignore the waivers. If you're not in the playoffs, at this point, your season's kind of over, but maybe you can fight for consolation prize. Some leagues, I know if you're the worst team in the league, you have to do some sort of punishment. So maybe you're fighting to avoid that. I don't know. But regardless, the waiver wire pickups of this week. First off, at quarterback, Taysom Hill. He's been on here, I don't know how many weeks in a row, 3 or 4. This is his third week in a row. If he's not picked up in your league, I don't know why he's not. Like even in my 110 team league where I have Dak and Joe Burrow, I already have two quarterbacks. I went and got Taysom because honestly, I'm tempted to start him over both at this point. And so if he's not on a team, you need to pick him up because he puts up QB1 numbers despite poor performances. We talked about it 2 weeks ago against Dallas. Those 4 interceptions, still at 24 points, despite not having a great game. Honestly, against the Jets, still put up 20 something. I think it was another 24-point performance in this one as well. So Taysom Hill, I mean, he's basically a running back playing quarterback, so he gets a lot of points, and so very helpful to have him. Next up, Ben Roethlisberger from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Over the last couple of weeks, he's actually put up a top 10 fantasy performance at the quarterback position. And so, obviously, I would say most teams probably have a starter that's better than him. But if you're a little bit desperate, maybe you just have really bad matchups. I don't know. Maybe you're in a two quarterback league. Ben Roethlisberger has started to look okay the last couple games. And so, I wouldn't necessarily say that he's like a super reliable, just plug and play option every week. But depending on the matchup, I mean, if they have a bad defense like we just saw against the Vikings, I mean, they can put up points. So also it helps that Najee Harris gets very involved in the passing game. So that's still points for Big Ben when he throws it to him. Moving on to running back, Philip Lindsay from the Miami Dolphins. It's looking like Miles Gaskin has COVID. Malcolm Brown, I think, is still injured, not supposed to come back. And I think they're playing the Jets this week. I might be wrong on that. I can't remember who Miami's playing. I'm going to pull it up just so I'm not wrong on this one. Miami upcoming week. Yeah, they play the Jets. Um, so the Jets just don't have a really good defense. That means that Philip Lindsay, if he's the running back, could get a pretty heavy workload. We saw in his first game with the Dolphins, he had, I think, 10 carries, which that your first game on the team, that's pretty significant. So if those two starting running backs are both out, Philip Lindsay seems like the very obvious option to be the guy. I think other guys like Salvin Ahmed could still get involved, but I don't know. Philip Lindsay's the most talented out of all of them. So I'd pick him up if you need him. And, worst case, he doesn't play. Miles Gaskin comes off the COVID list. Malcolm Brown comes back from injury, and you can drop Philip Lindsay later in the week, but he's definitely worth having on your bench for now until news comes out, potentially, just because of the workload that he could get. Next, Ernest Johnson from the Cleveland Browns. Feel like a record player every time I talk about him, but Kareem Hunt just got hurt, and so Ernest Johnson is one of the most valuable handcuffs in the league because when he is the go-to guy, he gets a lot of points. Nick Chubb is still healthy, but it's the fantasy playoffs. You never know what happens. Nick Chubb gets hurt. All of a sudden, Ernest Johnson becomes very valuable in a potential, winner go home scenario. So don't be caught lacking. Make sure you pick up Ernest Johnson, especially if you're a Nick Chubb owner, because you never know what happens to Ernest Johnson now. Even without, with Nick Chubb playing, Ernest Johnson, I would say he's a flex option just because of how Cleveland uses two running backs. Next up, and this is the pickup of the week, Rashaad Penny from the Seattle Seahawks. He was on here last week, so I cross my fingers, hope that you got him last week because everybody's going to want him this week after what he just did against Houston. The tough part is he does play the Rams this upcoming week, so that's a tough spot, but he's still going to be picked up pretty heavily if he's available. And he had a pretty monster performance against Houston. So absolutely worth the pickup because he seems like he's probably going to be the guy in the backfield for Seattle for most likely the rest of the year. Moving on to wide receiver, and we have three familiar faces that we had all in last week, so I'm not going to go too in depth. Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions, Russell Gage from the Atlanta Falcons, and KJ Osborne from the Minnesota Vikings. For Amon St. Brown, he's in here because they don't have very good options. And he's been pretty solid, pretty reliable. One of the more targeted and one of the receivers who plays the most in the Detroit Lions receiver room. Russell Gage, Calvin Ridley's not playing. Kyle Pitts' role has sort of decreased the last month or so, and Russell Gage has been the direct beneficiary of it. So he seems to be the best option receiving wise out wide for the Atlanta Falcons. And then KJ Osborne, as long as Adam Thielen is not playing, KJ Osborne is probably a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, even a flex starter. So make sure you pick him up. And then we have 2 more new receivers this week, no tight ends. First up, Devante Parker. This one surprises me that he's available in so many leagues, but he is. I'd pick him up because he proved that 2 weeks ago before the bye week, he could actually still be a fantasy relevant receiver, putting up a pretty solid performance in double digits. Yeah, I mean, they just don't have a lot of receiving talent, honestly, on the Dolphins team outside of Jalen Waddle right now. Will Fuller's still dealing with injuries. Mike Kosicki is sort of inconsistent. Gaskins is hurt. So Devante Parker against the Jets, very solid pickup. And then finally, Donovan Peoples-Jones from the Cleveland Browns. Just had a really solid performance last week against the Ravens. I know that they're out, missing a lot of their secondary members, but still, I think he had like 5 receptions for 90 yards. So very solid option available just because of, the role that he's going to have as the deep threat for Cleveland. So those are the week 15 waiver wire pickups. If you got more questions, starts and sits are coming later this week. If you have a question about who to pick up, who you'd rather have on your team for the rest of the season, drop it in the comments down below or go comment it on our social medias as well.
Yeah. So like John mentioned, any other questions, concerns, comments, feel free to shoot us at our Instagram, which is at @Shove&Ball_Pod if you're not watching on YouTube, which we are on YouTube. And then also we have a Twitter and TikTok, which is at @Shove&Ball is the handle for both of those. And we have a Facebook page. And you can find us on any podcast network, most podcast networks, major ones, Spotify, Apple, etc. But let me pull up the Thursday game. I didn't do that last week, and let me do it this week so I don't make that
Chiefs
mistake.
Chargers. I don't know the spread, but
Chiefs favored by 3.5. This is a tough one. I'm gonna go with the Chargers, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Chiefs win. But I'm going with the Chargers here.
Oh, I'm going to go with the Chargers too. I think they make a statement. I think they take the division lead, and I think they win.
Yeah, great. So we will see what happens there, and we'll see you all on probably Friday. We'll record on Thursday, do the rest of the picks then, and then also do our starts and sits of the week as well. Nonetheless, hope everyone enjoys your week. Hope you had a good weekend, and we will see you all next time.